So today I wanted to share with you guys something a little special and share with you guys how I got introduced to the PlayStation brand. Now, growing up, for me, it was all about Nintendo and Sega, whether it was the Master System, the NES, Super Nintendo, the Sega Genesis, and of course, I had the TurboGrafx 16, I had the CD attachment, I had, every once in a while there was something new, not just Sega and Nintendo. I loved the Neo Geo in the arcades, but there was no way I was able to get a Neo Geo because the games alone, if I wanted it to have a Neo Geo at home, the games alone were like $200 or $300, so there was no way that that was going to happen. And so every once in a while there would be different systems, whether it was the 3DO or the Jaguar, and I would religiously read gaming magazines. I still occasionally like looking at gaming magazines. And I'll never forget, I was checking the article, seeing what was going to be new with Sega or Nintendo, and there was an article on the Sony PlayStation. And I'll be totally honest with you guys, my first impressions when I found out that Sony was going to be making their own video game console, I was not excited at all. I was like, Sony, don't they make like Walkmans? They make a whole lot of other stuff. Now they're going to be making a video game console. Are they just kind of jumping on the bandwagon? I know. I thought that at the time. I'm totally set in. I was totally set in my ways. Even as a teenager, and for me, it's kind of sometimes I am a little slow when it comes to change. I totally will admit that. And I was at the time with the PlayStation. But then I was looking at some of the games that they were going to be releasing, and I was kind of interested. And then weeks that followed that first time I read that article, come to find out, Final Fantasy was no longer going to be on a Nintendo console. It was going to be, in fact, on the PlayStation. And so I'll never forget, I learned about how Final Fantasy VII was coming out on the Sony PlayStation. And I was very interested, and I'll never forget that first commercial I saw for Final Fantasy VII. I'm like, okay, I'm getting a Sony PlayStation. I do not care. I'm going to be picking up a copy of Final Fantasy VII. And at the time, I didn't really have a whole lot of money. I'm like, the Sony PlayStation, it got released. I ended up renting the PlayStation 1. And, of course, at the time, it was just the Sony PlayStation. I ended up renting Resident Evil 1 and also Final Fantasy VII. I rented both of those games. I had a blast. I had the system only for 2 days, and I fell in love with Final Fantasy VII. Resident Evil, this was a new franchise. I played that game so much when I had it, for those 2 days. And I was okay playing Resident Evil, but to be quite honest, at night when I went to sleep and days after that, that game freaked me out. At night my mind would play tricks on me, and I was super, super freaked out because that game had such, atmosphere to it. It just really had a presence to just kind of like play with my mind. Now, going back with Final Fantasy VII, I'm like, I have to get a PlayStation 1. And it took me a couple months to save up for a PlayStation 1, and that's what I did. I ended up going to Target, and I picked up a PlayStation 1, and I also picked up a copy of Final Fantasy VII. At the time, there were no greatest hits. I did have the black label at the time, but oh my gosh, kind of with gaming growing up, how it worked for me is I would play a game, beat it. If it was really good, I'd kind of go back to it and maybe play it again. But oftentimes, if I finished a game, I'd go on to something different. Not so with Final Fantasy VII. I played that game religiously, and I beat it 3 or 4 times before I went on to anything else. That's how much, that's the type of effect that Final Fantasy VII had on me. I absolutely loved that game, adored it. And I was a huge fan of the Final Fantasy series and enjoyed the games that were on the Super Nintendo. But this, for me, took things to a whole new level. And that, for me, was totally, I was kind of on the fence with getting a PlayStation, but once they announced that Final Fantasy VII was going to be released only on Sony's console, that totally did it for me. It totally, and through the months and years that the PS1 was out, there were lots of great experiences that I had with the PlayStation 1. And so it was a natural fit for me. There were so many great RPGs and action games on the PlayStation 1. I'm like, I was super excited and thrilled when they announced that the PlayStation 2 was coming out because there were so many great RPGs and action games and games of all different genres on the PS2. The PS2 has such an incredible library. And, years after I got the PS1, I ended up getting a PlayStation 2, and then of course I got the PlayStation 3. I didn't get the PlayStation 3 when it was at $600, but once it reached $300, once the PS3 Slim was released, that was totally a no-brainer, because by the time the PS3 Slim was released, there was such a great library for the PS3. And of course, a lot of you guys that are subscribed to my channel, I talk a whole lot about the PlayStation 4. Love that system, so many great games, and the great thing is that there are so many great games that are going to be coming out in the coming months and in the coming years. There's a lot of not just great first-party titles, but a lot of great third-party titles to look forward to for the PS4. But for me, the PS1, or at the time, it was just the Sony PlayStation, all started with a simple article in a gaming magazine. And granted, I'll be totally admitting, no one knew this but me, but I'll be totally honest. At first, I wasn't too excited about change, but I'm so grateful that I embraced it. And I was like, you know what? Sony, they're just not jumping on the bandwagon. They're going to make quality systems. They're getting relationships with some really great developers. And I just never looked back. And I'm just really grateful I did take that leap, because, I am just a single person out of the tens of millions of people that got a PlayStation 1. And that kind of did it for me. That's why I got a PlayStation system. And since then, I've been very happy, and there have been so many great experiences and games I've been able to enjoy. There's my quick history, guys, on why I got introduced, or why I started playing on the PlayStation brand. Any of you guys that have, whether you guys got started on the PS2 or PS3, let me know in the comment section below, guys. What was your first PlayStation system? And also, what did it for you? What were the games or game that made you like, you know what, I got to get a PlayStation 3 because it's got Ni no Kuni, or I've got to get PlayStation 1 because it's got Metal Gear Solid? Let me know in the comment section below. I read all comments. I'd be really interested to learn about why you got interested in the PlayStation brand. As always, guys, thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you later.